Hello! How you all doing? Let's make sure we've got a sound. Can you all hear me? Here we are. So, just wait for a few people to come in. So, yeah. So, like I said, I'm going to be running these live streams as many Saturdays as I can. So, I'm going to be here every week, hopefully. And yeah, each week I'm going to try and do a little bit of a seminar, masterclass, whatever you want to call it, and we can have a bit of Q&A. We can have a bit of a laugh. So I'm still waiting for my little tent that I can put over this because I'm trying to get rid of all the light, the extraneous light that I've got above, and then I'll be able to get some decent light, and I'm going to get some decent cameras for in here. Because at the moment, in the other room, that's where I do all the recording for the videos, the weekly videos. But I'd like to get it so that this is a really nice setup, but I need to set up some lights. I need to set up some... I mean, I've got lights on me, but they're just standard desk... well, they're good lights, actually, but it's... I want to get the proper... I want to take some of the lights out of there, get a decent DSLR on me, and hopefully we'll be able to make it a little bit nice. Hopefully you've all seen the... video that I did yesterday, all about the good old horizontal playing up and down the neck, and I'm going to expand on that a little bit today, talking more about triads. Yesterday it was all about scales. Today I'm going to incorporate triads, which in some ways are easier, in some ways they're harder. There's less notes to think of, but there's more jumps. So I'll get into that in a minute. I'll just wait for a few people to get in. I've got 17 at the moment, which is a nice number, but I'll just wait till we've got a few more in. See who we've got in. When this goes out, I'll sorry, not when it goes out. When it's finished, I'll cut off the beginning bit so that it gets straight into the seminar, webinar, whatever you want to call it. As I mentioned yesterday as well, I'm getting stuck into the book that I'm going to release called The Cyborg Bassist, Volume 1, Scale Mastery. So I'm just finishing off that, and then I'll be able to release that. It's to begin with, it's only going to be a PDF ebook release. I'll eventually try and get a hard copy release, probably through Kindle Publishing, something like that. But to begin with, I'm just going to go with a standard ebook format, just a PDF. So you'll be able to, download that to whatever on your computer or on your mobile devices and read through it that way. I mean, it's not really a read in the conventional sense. I mean, it's mainly exercises and music to read from. So it's it's a bit easier than if you were sat there reading the text. There is a bunch of text, but at the beginning of it, but the bulk of it is going to be exercises. Yeah, I'm quite happy with it so far. So that's good. So that's going to be coming out probably within the next couple of weeks. And it's going to be the first in a series. So I'm going to have a large number of these things coming out. Each one's going to concentrate on a different thing. So I might have one on pentatonics, one on triads, one on, and just work through like that. Modal stuff. All of it trying to bring about this more horizontal way of playing that I talked about yesterday. Because like I said, if you're going to be trying to, let's say, unlock the fretboard, like everybody seems to want to do, the only real way to do that is to actually start thinking more horizontally, just playing exercises and lines. Exercises are one of the best ways to do it, etudes. It's the way that pianists and, especially violinists and people like that, they do these kind of exercises all the time in the standard traditional classical method. They don't just learn, for a D major. They're going to learn it they're going to learn it up and down the neck. So in doing that, you really get used to, well, for a start, you get position shifting down. You become really good at that. But you also start to absorb the notes. I mean, for most people on a classical instrument, you're going to be looking at the notes anyway, which is what I'm going to talk about today as well. And by doing that and kind of operating outside of your comfort zone, you can kind of take on some of that more sort of classical tradition in terms of your actual learning, and that can only be a good thing. So yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about today. So we're up to 95 now. I'll just say hi to a few. I've got a bit of a cold, so you'll have to excuse my nose. Look at the state of my nose. I don't know if any of you have ever noticed on my my YouTube videos, but now my nose is really badly broken. Now I've mentioned it, you'll probably notice it more and more, but you can see that it's just like, it won't go that way. See, like it won't go that way, but it goes right over that way. It's completely broken. It's been broken for years. I broke it when I was a kid. I actually fell flat on my face, and I've got a little scar here. My teeth came through my lip, and I smashed all my nose in. I didn't know I'd broken it at the time. Everybody kept saying, "Oh, your nose is broken," but I was just worried about my mouth because it was ripped to bits, and so I had to have stitches in. But then after that, I just realised that my nose is all flat and squidgy. Kids like it, my kids, they love squidging my nose. So it's a bit of a party trick. And then I went on to doing things like karate and kickboxing and a few things like that. And so when you get hit in it, it kind of helps. I don't get it broken as easily. So yeah, I've got this. But now when you look at my YouTube videos, you'll be able to see that bend. I don't know if any of you know much about Stephen Fry, but he's got a really bad broken nose. And as soon as you know about it, you see it, it's like, So yeah. But I've got a cold at the moment, so I'm going to be a bit sniffly. So I'll just say hi to everybody, and then I'll get started on this triad thing. Hi, Walter. All the old faves are in. Hi, Coral, Martin. And yes, obviously it's been the King's coronation today. Don't know how everybody stands on all that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to get into any of that because it just starts aggro. Not from my end. I just mean people like arguing about the royals. Hello from a wet, dreary Swindon. Yeah, it's, caning it down outside. Hello from Tampa, Florida. Hi, Lenny. Hi, Hamish. Yeah, all the old faves are in. Normally, I'd be annoyed accidentally waking up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday, but you've given it a silver lining. Yes. Here I am waking up the bass players of this world. Hi, Dawn. I'm on a train down the California coast watching the live stream. Oh, that's good. I wish I was on the California coast instead of this dreary mess out there. Hi, Andreas from... do you mean Corfu, Greece? Or is that Corfu? I've never seen Corfu, but yeah, I've been to Corfu a few times. Hi, Mark, greeting from Texas. Hi. Where's your celebratory pint? Yeah, there's nothing here, and I'm not drinking at the moment because I'm on a diet at the moment. I'm trying to lose weight, although I've been having gin and tonics, but not while I'm doing this. Just finished learning the first two riffs from your 5 advanced bass riffs. Oh, that's good. I can't remember them. I can never remember anything that I've done. Looking forward to the Cyborg Bassist, but yeah, I know it's a bit of a strange title, the Cyborg Bassist, and all that, and 96 Etudes for Humans and Robots, but I wanted something that kind of stood out a little bit. The name actually came from the photo, the picture, because we were messing around, me and a friend doing some. You can tell how it's been done from an AI, from DALL-E 2. We were messing around, seeing what we could do with bass things, with robots and stuff, making bass images. And it came up with that one, and it was really good. And I was in the middle of doing these exercises. And then I thought, well, the exercises are very robotic. The idea of them is that you don't really think about them. You just play them. try not to be too analytical with the exercises. Because they will do the work for you. You know, when you learn these kind of things, it's so easy to fall into this kind of analytical thing. You know, so if you're playing up through something like, you know, like I showed yesterday, to start thinking, okay, I'm in this position, and then okay, I've shifted up into this, so I'm on that fifth kind of area. Oh, and then I've shifted up into this area. And then, you know, and if you were to come up here, well, okay, I'm up in... Okay, I'm in this area and being analytical about the areas, which is good, you know, that is a good thing to do. But in terms of the actual, you know, when you're addressing these exercises, you know, if let's say that you're learning as a beginner violinist or something like that, and you're given these etudes to learn, you don't really approach them, especially when you're a kid. You don't approach them with as much of an analytical mind. In fact, hardly any. In fact, no analytical mind. You just play the notes. You just do them. And the more that you play them, you go round and round on these things. It creates this muscle memory, and then you just let them do the work. So if you're just playing something like that and you're just getting it down, forget about what the actual, you know, even the scale, what it is. It's just the notes. But over time, you will start to acknowledge what these actual shifts are doing. You're moving through these positions. So, yeah, so the book is actually, you know, the idea of the book, because it was very robotic, I saw the image and I thought, right, okay, well, that works out. And then I thought, man, that'll actually give me a little bit of a tagline. And, you know, it's pretty hard to stand out from the crowd with books and courses and this and that. So I thought, well, it's a little bit different. So even though people are probably going to think I'm a bit stupid for actually doing it, well, you know, at least it catches the eye. So there is that. So, you know, so if you're going to don't get too annoyed at the, I mean, it's not clickbait, but don't get too annoyed about the silly title that I've got for it. So I'll just get down a few of these, and then I'll get started. Because as soon as I start talking, I don't look at the actual comments, and then, you know, until I've finished. So I'll get these out of the way. Cyborgs can play bass a very long time. That's right, yes. Until the batteries run out. Arpeggios on the bass have been opening so much for me. They truly are the foundation of harmony. But they are the foundation of harmony. Mark is a martial artist too. Well, not anymore. We're going way back. We're back in the early 90s, really, all of that stuff. I did jiu-jitsu for a while. There's the gyms next door. I love your walking bass course. Thank you. Foggy Scotland. Yeah. Cool. So, just skim through these. Cool, you bass in the background, yeah, up there. Couldn't get used to the rubber strings. Yeah, I find it hard to play. I'm not that big a fan, to be honest. But it does sound wicked. You know, I mean, when it's in tune, which is rare, it does actually sound like a double bass, which is funky. So it is Corfu. Great. You could have 7 of 9 on the cover. Yeah, well, then I'd be going for the full clickbait, wouldn't I? It started raining heavier. I've got this metal roof, so you'll have to excuse that if it starts coming through. I play strictly by sound and developing memory. Okay. How come we have many bass educators from Leeds? I don't know. Me and Scott talked about this, and Jeff, right? So it is weird that... So Leeds, Scott Devine, that is. He's originally from Carlisle. I don't know how many people know that. So he's originally from Carlisle, which is up closer to Scotland. He's up in Cumbria. And he moved down. He ended up working at Overwater, that are based up in Carlisle. And is it Carlisle? No, I think it's actually a bit further down. It might be somewhere closer to the Lake District. Anyway, he ended up starting at Wakefield College, which is near Leeds. That's where I'm from. I'm from Wakefield. And I'd been at Wakefield College for years before I went and did my degree at Leeds College of Music. And then After that, I ended up working in a computer firm for doing technical authoring and stuff like that for a lot of financial software. It was like the most dullest. I was going to be an RAF intelligence officer, actually, for a while. That was the plan, because I'd left uni, and then I'd applied for that job. You know, as soon as you get a degree, there's like all these different things that you can do. And I thought, oh, well, that sounds quite funky. So I was going to get into that. And then I ended up going and working for this computer company. But I just couldn't be bothered with that after a while. And then after about a year, I came back down to Wakefield. I was working in Harrogate. I came back to, and Scott was there. I was doing a postgrad. So I did a postgraduate degree and at that college. And Scott was there. He was doing the same course. So it was me and Scott Devine as the bass players. This is 1998, I think. And so it was just us two. We just sat there, you know, taking turns playing bass for all the ensemble stuff, you know, like doing jazz standards and things. And that day, my old bass teacher who did loads of the teaching there, theory, oral, computer stuff, everything, he had a nervous breakdown and he ended up having to finish. He ended up going home, and the head of music came to me and says, Mark, can you take some lessons? And I'm like, all right. And that's how I became a music teacher. So, and Scott was still there. So, but we stayed friends, and we were just gigging, doing the standard stuff around there, and that's how that went. The YouTube thing was a completely different thing. That was like I was on a ship. I was doing the cruise gigs, and Jeff Chalmers. Here's the irony of it. It's really weird. Jeff Chalmers. I don't know if any of you have seen Discover Double Bass. It's like the biggest double bass website. It's like SBL, but for double bass. Well, Jeff is from Leeds. He was working for Scott at the time because he just started I think he'd been doing the channel for a while, doing SBL. Me and him were on a ship together because he'd taken this gig on this ship. I'd asked Scott to dep for me on that gig as well because my daughter was born. Me and Jeff ended up on this cruise, a big one as well. It was like a world cruise. So we're on there. Didn't even mention anything about what we were doing back home, starting up this YouTube thing and all that stuff. And he didn't even mention that he knew Scott. And all three of us have now gone into that space, completely didn't know about each other doing it. You know, I came back and Scott had started doing that. I'd started up mine. Jeff was doing his. And we're all best mates, but none of us knew. So it's really weird. We're all from, Jeff's originally from York, but he was at Leeds College of Music. We're all in Leeds in that little bit. There's a few others as well. Zoltan Dekaney, one of Jeff Berlin's biggest proteges. He teaches at Leeds College of Music, or he did, but he was in Leeds. There's a guy called Dan Francis Owen. He's from Leeds. He's got a channel. There's a bunch of us that are all from Leeds. Don't know what it is. I don't know if it's to do with Leeds College of Music or something, but anyway, that's the story. So, yeah. Oh, tuning in from Barbados. So that's cool. What month is it? Oh, it'll be nice in Barbados at the moment. Yeah. Okay, right. So we've got 138 in. That's cool, right? So I've got my Fender Precision today. So this is my 82. I think I had this last week as well, didn't I? This is my 82 made in Japan one. And I really like this bass. And I've got Nordstrand pickups in. I took out the original, well, it had EMGs in it, but so it sounds like a Precision. So, yeah, I really like this. So I'll be using this today. In fact, I think I've got the tone down. I'll take that back a bit. It's not overloading, is it? Cool. I just don't want it going because I can hear it through these headphones, but sometimes it overloads on the input. Okay, so triads, right? So the reason I'm going to talk about triads is because so yesterday I did the lesson on moving horizontally up and down the bass, and like I said earlier, that's the way to learn how to play horizontal. It's one of those things that you just have to, one of those like rivers that you've got to cross, because you know, you don't want to, you know, when you first start playing, because you learn a scale And it's easy. You just play it in that one position. And, why do I have to start moving around all over the place? You get that head on. And especially, when it comes to these, like triads and arpeggios and things like that. Because you can't look at them in the same pattern way. There are still patterns in there, but you can't just see it in one area. Just like a finger pattern, like a 2/4, 1/2/4, 1/3/4. You can't do that because you've got to start thinking of notes. The thing I was talking about yesterday. Don't talk about notes. It gives me a migraine. That kind of thing. So the key to this is actually to start working on exercises and things like that move through these positions. And like I said, don't worry too much about what's going on. Just play the damned exercises, and just run them, And here's the key, right? Don't go through all the keys straight away, and this is really going to apply with these triads that I'm going to talk about. Don't get too caught up in playing in every key. Oh, we can play that major triad, playing in every key. Focus on one in particular for a while. Focus on one key. If you focus on one key, you're going to get used to the terrain. You're going to get used to the notes in there. Everybody gets used to C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Easy enough. There's no sharps or flats. So, that is one of the keys where people think, oh, okay, well, I can kind of move around a bit. But with triads, it's always the case that somebody will learn a triad, like a major triad, or maybe with the octave. They'll just learn that, root, third, and fifth, and then end up doing this. Or maybe go through the circle of fourths. So you might go... that kind of thing, right? And I've done loads of exercises like that on the channel, so I'm guilty of this as much as anybody, and they are good exercises to do. But what happens is that you get so caught up in the actual that pattern, second finger, first finger, fourth finger. You get so caught up in that as that's a major triad that you can't get out of the box. So as soon as you want to start moving around, you run into a bit of a dead end, like a brick wall. And, that you can't rely on those patterns as much. So, like I said, there are patterns in there. But what we'll do is we'll look at a few different triads. Now, I'm not going to get too much into triadic construction and all that. I've talked about that way too much on the channel. All you're going to need to know for this, and hopefully you've got some basses with you. If you've got your bass with you, it'll really help. So all we're going to use is a major triad, right? Okay, so, I've talked about tertian harmony, how it's built from thirds, all that kind of stuff. Don't worry about that. All we're going to have is a root note, and then from that root note, we're going to have a major third, and then a perfect fifth. So for a C major triad, C, E, G. And yes, you can see it as that pattern of third fret A string, second fret D string, fifth fret on the D string. That little pattern, okay? So there's that major triad. So that's all you need to know to begin with. Now, first of all, what are the notes in there? Now, like I said, everybody switches off as soon as you start talking about notes. Probably because people don't have the knowledge of the fretboard. Because if you knew every note on the neck, it'd be a little bit easier. But when you don't know the notes on the neck, and you don't know the notes of a scale, and you don't know the notes of a triad, but you know that, well, it seems like you've created a shortcut for yourself. And you think, okay, well, I can play bass lines now. I can play major triads. But that's such a tiny part of it. So let's look at a C major triad, okay? So we're going to have C, E, and G, okay? Now, like I said, we're just going to focus on that one to begin with. We'll look at three triads, right? C, E, and G. Think keg, C, E, G, okay? Because you can actually do spelling drills with these things. You can think C, E, G, and then for a D major, it'd be D, F sharp A, E, G sharp B for an E major, F, A, C for an F major. That spells out a certain type of word, a certain cuss word. G, B, D for G major, A, C sharp E for A major, and B, D sharp, F sharp for B. I've just run through the natural chords. That's all the triads based on natural root notes, okay? So you can do just that, work out what those notes are. But for now, we're just looking at C major. It's just C, E, and G. Right. So we're going to split the neck up into 3 general positions. We're going to have roughly this kind of area, right? It's not a very specific area because we are going to move around a little bit. But there's going to be roughly this area, a 1st fret to, let's say, 5th fret or 6th fret, right? And we're going to be looking at the root notes on the E and A string. So we're starting at the lowest note. So forget about the D and G strings for now. It's going to be root notes starting on the E and A string within those first 5 frets. Then the second position is going to be roughly around this 6th fret to 11th fret, that no man's land that everybody hates playing in. So that's going to be this area. And then we're going to have this area above the 12th fret, which is basically a repetition of this area. So when you see C there on that, that first fret marker there, well, that one's the C as well. So that's just a repeat of that. So not much to think about there. So C, E, G. We've got that triad there. So if we move up into this next area, where do we have another C? Well, we've got a C there at the 8th fret. Okay, this is where learning your fretboard comes into play. So C, E, and G. So we've got that and that. And then we've got it up here again at the octave of this. So starting on the 15th fret, 15th, 14th, 17th. Okay, so that's 3 positions that you can move into. And I mean, that's quite cool anyway. So if you're playing like a bass line down here, and then you want to shift up to do something like a fill, you can kind of move into that area just because that's a C. And then up here, so you've got that area as well. But the problem is switching between them, right? So remember what I said, we've got the C, E, and G. So now we want to find a C, E, G. We want to keep going because we're wanting to play this as a 2 octave or more. So C, E, G, the next note's going to be C. So we could play the C there at the 5th fret of the G string, but we're going to run into a brick wall again. We're going to find it hard to move up here. So what I'm going to do is actually shift to the C there at the 10th fret. So this is... So remember what I said about this as a general position? So we've got the C, E, G there. Well, you can actually extend that there. So there, it's just the octave of that C. So, but we're playing the C down here. Yes, I could have started here, but we're talking about positions, okay? So we've already moved up. And then we're going to move up to the octave of the C there at the 17th fret of the G string. Now, I know what you're thinking. Man, that's some position shifting. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. The more that you try to do these kind of lines that span wider areas, the better you become at them, and the more you start to see those notes under your fingers like this. So, like I said, don't get too analytical. Don't start thinking, I've got to move on to F major, and then I've got to move on to B flat major, or C sharp, D sharp, E. I've got to do them in every key. Forget about the other keys. Forget about the other triads. Just concentrate on one. Just get that down. And then maybe add another, like G major, or F major, or something like that. And then you've got 2, right? The problem that most bass players tend to have is that they don't focus on one thing for long enough. Everybody, including me, online or everywhere, tells you to work through keys. Run it through everything. Spend some time on one thing. Let it sink in. Get the notes under your fingers. Learn what those notes are. If you, every day for like 7 days, just focused on C, E, G, and all you were doing was thinking C, E, G. Remember what we said? C, E, G. That's a C major triad. That's all you're thinking. C, E, G, C, E, G. Bombarding yourself with C, E, G. You ain't going to forget that C major is C, E, G. And the more that you play these kind of things where you're coming down through, or if you to add inversions into the mix as well, the more you're going to absorb that information, and it's just going to become muscle memory after a while. And those kind of position shifts are going to become a lot easier. At first, when you try it, you're going to go, oh dear, you might miss, but eventually you'll get good at it. And you just need to play it slowly. Play it light in the fingers, okay? So don't tense up. Don't tense up when you get to it. Light in the fingers and look where you're going. So I'm playing that C, E, G there, 3rd fret A string, 2nd fret and 5th fret on the D string, and then I'm going to move for this C here. So I need to, just like when you slide, you look at the destination first. So I'm looking here, but before I move, I'm looking here. And I'm aiming for that with the 2nd finger, the middle finger. So isolate the move to begin with. So 4th finger to the 2nd finger. 4th finger to the 2nd finger. Don't worry about getting it in time and all that kind of stuff. Just play it badly. Play it. All of this, you want to make mistakes. You want to do it you want it to be bad and then grow, right? So just get used to that to begin with, and then you come up. Now, at all times, you should be thinking of what those 3 notes are that I was talking about. Yes, you want to see the pattern. Yes, you want to see all of these things. You want to see the scale degrees. You want to see the intervals within it, the root, the 3rd, the 5th. But you also want to see the notes. So we had C, E, and G. Remember, that's all we're thinking. We're not moving on to D. We're not moving on to F. It's just C, E, and G. Think C, that's a C. E, that's an E. G, that's a G. There's a G. There's that C. So every time you move for that, you're thinking C. Some of you might not have known that 10th fret on the D string is a C like that. You might have been able to work it out by thinking, okay, well, the D string, the 12th fret's the same, and there's the C. I know what it's like. When I first started out, I knew I was terrible with the fretboard. Now I don't have any problem. But, back then, I do remember what it was like. I was working things out with octaves. Find an A on the D string. Okay, well, there's an A, there's an octave, there's an A. I've seen guitarists do that all the time. But now, if you just focus on this exercise over and over and over and over again, thinking C, E, G, C, you're going to keep seeing that C. It's like a test. You're going to keep testing yourself. There's that C, there's that C. There it is on the 10th fret. And like I say, focus on it for ages. You just spend as much time as you can on it. Hang on it until you know it inside out. Classical musicians will sit there playing through etudes over and over and over again. They don't analyze the etude, they just play it. And that's kind of where we are with this. So you're at the C, and then you continue up E and the G, okay? So you might not have really known that's an E. Some of you might not have realized that's an E. You might not realize that's G. Well, you do now. C, E, and G. Same pattern as down here. And there's your root, there's your 3rd, there's your 5th. Okay? Now, at first, you're going to mess it up. Oh, dear. Slow. Lighter finger. Remember what I said. Track where you're moving. Look up first. Like, while I'm playing that, I'm looking here. And really sharpshoot it. So with that 2nd finger. Then you're up to the G, and here's the tricky one. We're going to move up to the the C at the 17th fret of the G string. So this is an even bigger move. You can try this with multiple different fingers, but you've got to get up there. So, okay. And that is going to help you learn that that's a C. Okay, so C, E, G, C, E, G. Now, what's happened there is we've moved through those 3 positions that I talked about. Remember what I said? We've moved through each one in turn. Here's the low one, here's the middle one, and up at the top. Now, if you're, from an analytical, applicable side of things, you could think to yourself, okay, well, now I have a doorway for getting through to each one of those positions. And you could hang around, so I'm now in the middle position, and then up. I don't have to just play that C. I can actually come down that C major there, or I could have come down that C major there, or this one. But because you know the notes, C, E, G, no matter where you are, you should be able to just find them. So, I mean, the key to doing all of this is to know the notes of the triad and then know the notes on the neck, and then you can just find them. But there is something to be said for just playing these lines, working through. Now, I am on along the same kind of lines as Jeff Berlin with this, in that you shouldn't really question it. That's the thing that most people want to know is, how does that help me? Well, how does that? Don't worry about that. These are just etudes that will change the way that you play, but you won't realize until it happens. Because you play through these things for long enough, and all of a sudden you're going to start thinking, oh, I know where I am with this major arpeggio, with this C major arpeggio. Like I said, forget all the others, just C. Stick with that for a while. And then when you're playing over a C major chord, something like that, you're going to have the facility to find like chord tones over that particular chord. Now, obviously, we're only looking at the basic triad, and it's not exactly the funkiest thing in the world playing. It's just an arpeggio, but that arpeggio is at the heart of about 99% of music. So the major triad is because the major triad is the basis for the dominant 7 chord and the major 7 chord. Yep, there's some minors in there, but you look at any 3-chord trick, it's going to be chords 1, 4, and 5 in a key. They're all major triads. So major triads are going to be, the core of all of that. You can put other things around it. That's all. I'm still basing that on a major triad. Whatever I've got in there, it's still based around a C major triad. All of that. Yes, I am kind of using a D7, but a C7, but a 7 chord is based on a major triad. It's a major triad with the dominant 7 at the top. The heart of it is that major triad. So you can fill in the gaps with chromatics like that. That's a C major, look. Just what I played here. All around that C major triad. So that's the C major triad. So like I say, that's just an exercise that you can play. Now you could come down a different way. There's a multitude of different ways. This exercise, we're just working up. Now you could then come back down like that. So I've played this. Let's say you're on the C, then come back down to the 4th finger and the 1st finger for the G and the E, then down to the C, and then down. Now, one of the cool things about the descent is that you're not going to be thinking of the root note. You're not going to be thinking of the C. You're going to be thinking of the G, because when we came up, we were targeting the root note, weren't we? So C, E, G, and then C. There's the C. On the position shift, we're targeting the C, and then targeting the C again. On the descent, we're targeting the G, the 5th of the chord. So this is where learning your chord tones comes into play. So if you know that the C major triad is C, E, and G, remember, that's all we're talking about. We're not talking about any other triads. And that's why we're saying just get C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G into your mind. If you know that G is the 5th of that chord, well, now we're getting into intervals and we're starting to see the individual chord tones. So when you come down, you think G, where's the G? Oh, there's the G. You can catch it. Instead of trying to think when you're on that C, oh man, what pattern am I going to use to get down? Because you're going to want some kind of pattern. There's going to be something in you saying, can't I come down through that? Yeah, but why make it easy on yourself? It's an exercise. You want to push yourself. So there's the G. That's the fifth of the chord. Then you just come back down through that. You can see that as a pattern. No harm in that. And then when you come down here, aim for the G again. Fourth finger, 5th fret. So as we come up, targeting the C, and then coming down again, we're targeting the G. That's just... And like I say, you don't have... This isn't about speed. It's not about, any of that stuff. You don't have to play it metronomically precise. It's not... There's consistent 16th notes. It doesn't have to be 1 E and 2 E and, It's just... That'll do. Or even this. E, G, where's the C? C, E, G, right, C, C, right, G, where's the G? Oh, it's 12th fret there. That's good, because that means that you don't know, which means that you're pushing yourself. So then when you've done it, you do it again. And eventually, you won't have a problem. So, like I said, bass players tend to move on very quickly because they generally think patterns, and they'll be thinking, oh, look, I can play in every key. Well, you can't really, can you? You're just moving that pattern around. That's why, as soon as you get into anything else and somebody gives you a chord progression, let's say it was like, A minor 7, D7, like, to a pianist, they'd know instantly, usually, that that's a 2-5 chord progression in G major, because they're used to seeing chords. But to a bass player, that's not always the case. I mean, I'm not saying everybody, I just mean that we don't look at notes as much as we do patterns. You could sit there and think, okay, A, and then D, okay, and then it's a G major, but we tend to think in terms of patterns from the start, and it's often a problem. Now, I am using patterns here, aren't I? I mean, I'm using that pattern there, and then I'm using this pattern. You can't really not. I had an argument with a pianist in a band I used to be in years ago, a really good pianist as well, a good jazz player, and he's a sax player as well, really good. He was actually he was a sax player before he was a pianist. Which led to this conversation. So we were talking about whether I saw patterns or whether I saw notes. Now, this was a sight reading gig I was on, so we were, he knew that I knew the notes, right? But he was talking about guitarists, and he says, look, do you just see patterns or do you see notes? Because he found the fact that guitarists are very pattern-based, a little bit amateurish. And I said, well, yeah, I know what the notes are under my fingers, but there's no getting around it. I am seeing patterns. I can't not. If I play, I know it's C, D, F, G, A, B, C, and I can see that that's a C, and that's a D, and that's an E, and I am thinking of the notes as I play through it, but there's no getting around it. There's a fingering going on. There's a fingering pattern. And I says, look, when you're playing sax and you're playing through a scale, there's a fingering pattern, as you're playing, holding down the keys. It's you can't help but see patterns. You play a scale on a piano. I've got a piano there. As soon as you play through it, at first you'll see the notes, but eventually it just becomes a finger exercise. It just, if you're playing through a G major, for instance, and you're working up, you start on the G, you work up through the white keys, and there's an F sharp, and you work up through it. Yes, you know what the notes are, but there are patterns in there. So I'm not totally anti-pattern. I use patterns all the time. If I play an octave, I'm playing an octave pattern, But you can get too caught up in that. You can just be thinking, oh, give me the pattern, give me the pattern, give me the pattern, and you become scared of moving outside of the patterns. But this is how to get around it. Start seeing the actual notes. Like I said, just a C major triad, C, E, G. I mean, that's been the subject of this so far. I keep hammering it on, like a like Darren Brown or something. C, E, G, C, E, G, and getting used to the fact that that's C, E, G, C, E, G, C, G, E, C, G, E, C. Play through that quite a few times, even if you're just considering it a technical exercise for the position shifts, and you are going to find that that's a C, that's a C, and that's a C, because you've been doing it round and round and round. So the key here is to play the exercise as an exercise, nuts and bolts exercise. Don't worry too much about the application and all that kind of stuff. Play it like that, but think of the notes as you're going. It's just a different perspective. It doesn't mean that you have to stop learning all the other stuff in the same way, but adding these kind of exercises into your playing is going to make a big difference. So I would say hang around on that C major triad for a week. Just keep thinking about it. C, E, G, C, E, G. Bang it out. Up and down there. And there's obviously other ways that you could play it. I could start here and then come down in a few different ways. Maybe start at the open string and come up E, G, C, like that. But don't get too clever. Just think of one exercise and then just work on that. With the book that I'm bringing out, that's what I'm promoting with it. I'm saying, look, stick with an exercise. That's why instead of putting the exercises through the keys instantly, like exercise 1, C, then G, then F, instead of doing that, I'm just doing all of the exercises in C, and then I'm doing all of the exercises in G, and then in F, and then, D, and then B flat, and working through like that. Because I want you to stick with a key. Just stick with one key, stick with one scale, and really get it down. So, very quickly, let's try something else. Let's try E major. So E major is going to be different, right? So I'm going to start in this low area again. Remember what I said at the start? Anybody that's missed it, we had 3 positions, got this one, and this one. And we're pretty much moving through them with this triad. So what are the notes of the E major triad? So we know it starts with an E, then we've got a G sharp. Remember what I said? It's major third, so E, G sharp, and B. You don't even have to think about the construction, all the theory behind it. It's just E, G sharp, and B. When I was a kid, I was learning organ first, and they just give you the chords. They don't sit there saying, oh, okay, well, it's a major third and a perfect fifth. That's the chord, C major. That's the chord, F major. And you just learn it. There's something to be said for that, just accepting the information or accepting the exercise, accepting the tune that you're going to learn, and then just playing it. So E, G sharp, B. Okay, so that's the next one. So remember what we had before? C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G, round and round and round, keg, C, E, G, C major. This time we got E, G sharp, B. Some of these ones, like D major, E major, and A major, are a little bit like a mountain. I kind of see them like that. You've got natural note, sharp, natural note. Okay, so E, G sharp, B is is E major. D, F sharp, A is D major. A, C sharp, E is A major. So you can see these little patterns all over the place, right? So E, G sharp, B. So we're gonna play the open E this time. So instantly we can't do what we were doing before, where we just had this pattern. So we're in this low area, so we need to find some of those notes. E, so where's there a G sharp? So if you've got your basses out, try and find a G sharp, right? Okay, so first one that you're going to find is going to be here. So it's going to be the 4th fret of the E string, okay? So if you didn't know that as a G sharp very well now you do. So we've got that one, which I'm going to play with the 4th finger. So E, G sharp, and then a B. Well, we get one straight there under the 1st finger. E, G sharp, B. Now, obviously, we're going to be moving up through these positions, so we want to move fairly soon because we don't want to get too caught up in, down here, because we're going to run out of area. So E, G sharp, B. Now let's move up into this next area. So let's move up to this E here at the 7th fret of the A string. Again, you're learning the notes of the bass. So there's that E. So we've targeted that. So I played with the fourth finger and the first finger for the G sharp and the B, and now I'm playing that one with the second finger. And then you can just come up through that basic major arpeggio. But remember, E, G sharp, B. Keep thinking of those notes as you do it. So E, G sharp, okay, that's the G sharp, there it is. You don't have to sit there absorbing it too much, but just knowing that that's G sharp and there's B. That's that fret. And then I'm going to move up to this E at the, the 14th fret of the D string. So once again, we've got a big position shift. So we're aiming at the E. So it's that E, but up here. 14th fret of the D string, playing it with the second finger, okay? Okay, again, it's going to take a little bit of doing to get used to that, and look where you're going before you play it. I'm playing it fast just for the sake of time, but obviously just take it in your own time. E, G sharp, B. E, G sharp, B. And if you forget what fingerings I've used and all that kind of stuff, just think what are the notes of E major? E, G sharp, and B. Okay, now think about it. I've just been working through this for a minute or whatever, and I've kept reiterating that it's E, G sharp, B. You're gonna get used to me saying E, G sharp, B. You might get sick of me talking about notes, but it's gonna go in there. E, G sharp, B, E, G sharp, B, E, G sharp, B, right? Just as I was doing before, C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G. I'm harping on about that just to get it in there, right? So E, G sharp, B, E, G sharp, B, E. Well, looky here, we can keep going. G sharp and B. So we've got G sharp 13th fret of the G string, and then B up at the 16th fret. Okay, so we can get up to there. I mean, on a more frets, if I'd got a 24 fret or a 22 fret bass, you'd be able to get up to that E up there. But we're just going to go up to the B. Okay, and then you can come down again, and remember what I said before, you have to learn which one is the fifth so you can come down. So we're on the B, the G sharp, and the E. What's the fifth of the chord? It's B. So we drop down to that B, so you got to now target the B, know which one's a B. G sharp, E, B, G sharp, E. Consider this a game. You know, you're kind of gamifying it, just thinking, okay, well, I'm on the E, where's the B? It's like, find the B. You know, it's like, where's Wally? It's like, where's B? You know, find the B, and then come down. You don't need me to give you tab for this. This is one of the, you're better finding it yourself. You just think, okay, I'm working up through here. Now, you've got three separate different little kind of things going on here. You've got this pattern, which is nothing to do with that finger pattern. You know, it's just this, E, G sharp, and B. It's a first finger pattern, really. Then you got this, and then you've got this one. And yes, that's a repeat of this, but it's in this higher position. So now we're coming down, B again, B, down at the bottom, G sharp, and E. So that was a very different exercise to that one. As we came up here, we were working up from the A string, instantly jumping up to the D string, and then up to this C. Completely different motion in the hands, completely different notes that you're thinking about, you know. And then this one. Okay? So this is how to see them. So, like I said, spend several days on C major triad. Just thinking about the notes, C, E, G, finding them, seeing the fifth and third and the root, fifth, third, root, C, E, G, seeing the frets, seeing the fretboard pattern as well. Getting used to the actual position shifts, and then you can move on to a different chord. Doesn't matter what it is, just a different one. So I went for E because it's pretty different from C. So again, completely different shape to everything as you're moving down. E, G sharp, B. So the one thing that you've probably worked out by now from me just waffling on about this stuff is that the C major triad is C, E, G. And the E major triad is E, G sharp, B. Now I know if there's any pianists out there watching this, then you'll be thinking, well, duh, but You know, just me going round on those, you're probably going to know it by now. You will have probably memorized that C, E, G is C major and E, G sharp B is E major. That's just in this amount of time. If you were to spend half an hour just running through these exercises, well, I mean, half an hour is a bit of a long time to just be doing that over and over again. But you might need to, because, I mean, I'm making it probably look fairly straightforward playing up through there because I'm pretty good at doing the position shifts. But for a beginner, I know that is going to probably be tricky. So C, E, G, C. So you've got to get used to the actual the motion and seeing those notes as you come down. It's not enough to get up there and think, well, there's a maybe it's that kind of pattern. You know, looking for ridiculous patterns. Just look at the note, see the note, and it's right there. You don't have to think, okay, it's a perfect fourth, which means if I can kind of picture that pattern and that, it's kind of like that. Forget that. Just think, I'm on a C, I need a G, there's a G, okay? And then you can just come down. Same with the E. E, G sharp, B. See? I keep going over this because I want this to stick in your mind. E, G sharp, B, E, G sharp, B, E, G sharp, B. Coming down, G sharp, E, and then B, the fifth of the chord, B, G sharp, E. If you were to spend a week just playing various etudes around that E major, you're going to learn it. You're going to learn those notes. You're going to learn those patterns. You're going to learn everything about it. But that's the problem. Bass players don't spend long enough. And guitarists are the same. They don't spend long enough on one particular exercise or one particular element. It always becomes, oh, well, a major triad is built from a root major, third, and fifth. Oh, great. There you go. Go forth and multiply. So it's just a case of, I can play, I can make bass lines now out of major triads. Yeah, but you're not gonna get all the information. So this leads me to the book again, right? So the first book that I'm releasing probably within the next couple of weeks, that one is scales. So it's about keys. Because keys, they're what we're playing most of the time. So it's going to be about those. But I am going to do one on triads. And there are 8 core exercises for each, 8 core exercises, basically. So for the scale one, for the book that's coming out, okay, so you've got the 2-octave scale. Then there's one where it just starts down at the lowest note on the bass and up to the highest note on the bass. So you basically work up, and then you just work down, coming down through from open E string right up to the top note. Then there's ones like, what is there? There's seconds. So working through like that. You've got neighbor notes. The sequences of 4s, 3s. There's a bunch of different sequences, right? So you get to really, really rip the hell out of that scale. So let's say that you're doing that on C major, right? You'll get so used to the notes of C major and these different positions there by just running these exercises and trying not to think too analytical, just playing them, just accepting them for what they are, and then just running them. Always aware of what the notes are, but just running them. And you'll get used to it even more. So back to the triad, what I just mentioned about that, you could run that for maybe half an hour a day for 7 days, and you're really going to know that C, E, G is the C major, and you're going to know these positions. Yes, but you also want other exercises. So instead of just running that, you want to be able to run through things like inversions and things like that. Other triadic exercises. Let's say there were 8. That's what I'll do in the second book. 8 exercises that just run through those triads, just through one triad. So instead of just one exercise on C major, you'll have 8. And then you just run them, always thinking C, E, G, seeing the position shifts, targeting, position shift. Yep. You're not going to use that in a song. A lot of you will be like, yeah, but man, I like playing country and western bass, and I've never been called upon to play that. I'm not playing solfeggio. I'm not playing Bach and Stravinsky. And it's like, it doesn't matter. That's not what this is. This is just learning the basics of harmony and just getting some fluidity in moving around the bass. And just a few exercises like that can change everything. It just changes. Because remember that you want to be practicing stuff that's harder than the stuff that you're going to generally learn. So I've always been kind of the mindset, personally, that any kind of band I'm going to be in or any kind of song I'm going to learn is going to be within my ability. I like to practice so that I'm not, having problems. And to be fair, I never have. I don't think I've ever once been in a band where I have had a problem learning the stuff. It's always been very within my own technical abilities, even from a beginner. I just wasn't in bands that were going to be. It wasn't like I joined Chick Corea electric band or something. But that's the key, is to practice stuff that is then going to mean that you are above the level of the stuff that you're going to be learning, and it makes things easy. And it's these kind of things that make the difference. Running these kind of scale exercises, arpeggio exercises, learning the harmony, all of that stuff. It's like all those bass lines that I do on the channel, when I break one down, like, whatever it is. They're all fairly, anybody that's doing a cover of something on YouTube will generally be a lot higher than the level of the thing that they're doing, because otherwise, how are you going to do it? You're going to find it really difficult. The only one that I've had a problem with was probably solfeggietto, because I learned it in those 11 days or whatever it was on Facebook. So when it came to recording it that next week, it had only taken me just over a week to learn the damn thing, and it was pretty hard. It was hard. So I didn't really like that, but that was a little bit different for me. I personally like to be playing things that are within my abilities, because mainly, that's not showing off. The point being that if I'm going to be on stage playing, the last thing I want to be thinking about is technique and ability and, oh my God, this bit's coming up that I'm going to have a problem with. I don't want that. And like I said, I've never had that. I've never had a problem on stage, because it's always been within my own capabilities. I'd probably never try and join a band that I didn't have the capabilities of playing, simply because you'd be better off with someone better than me. It's a bit like a brain surgeon. If you're having a brain operation, and that brain surgeon is going to be having problems, you think, oh man, this guy's going to find this hard. Man, you won't want the brain operation. You want that guy to be like, special forces of blooming, of surgery, if they're going to be operating on your head. And I just think the same thing with music. If I'm going to be joining a band, I want to be good enough to actually do it. And if I was taking on a person for the band, I want them to be playing within themselves. So, like I said, it's all this kind of stuff, and just playing and learning and reading and that gets you to that level. But the problem you've got for bass players is that they don't really have much in terms of methods. So this is Jeff Berlin's beef, basically. I disagree with him on quite a few things, but I do agree with him on quite a few other things. And one of them is that there is no traditional method for bass guitar, because it's such a new instrument. For double bass, it's such an old instrument. You've got Rabath, you've got like Simandl, you've got all these different methods. Violin, you've got same again, piano, you've got all these different classical traditional methods. And all you have to do is let that method do its work. You just learn the exercises, the etudes, you learn the stuff, and it works. But we don't have that as bass players, unfortunately. So I'm going to try and fill in the gap a little bit with some of these books that I'm doing. But it's this kind of stuff, just being able to, see the notes and work through them that helps. I'm hoping that me harping on about E, G sharp B and C, E, G has probably helped a little bit. So let me know if you actually now know what those notes are from. You might know them already. But I didn't put any tab up or anything like that, because I didn't want that. My main aim with this is that you think to yourself, 2-octave arpeggio, C major, and then know the notes, and you work it out. I mean, there is a kind of method for that. You know, we're moving it up here. You know, I've set out the exercise there, but you should be able to do that yourself. So that's a little bit about triads and unlocking the fretboard in that same way, thinking horizontally. Okay. So I've waffled on for long enough. I'm probably sending everybody to sleep now. So I'll see what everybody's saying. Probably all slagging me off. I don't want to hear about notes. Oh, thanks for the super chat there, Antonio. So where did I get to? So I'll just do a bit of Q&A now before going back. My missus has got she's got 2 gigs in the same venue tonight, so I'm going to be babysitting, and she's coronation thing. She's playing on one floor, and then apparently there's a Queen tribute on the other floor, and she's playing in between the sets down there, and then going back up and doing the sets upstairs. So she's got a busy night tonight, so I need to get back moderately early. Just the number of the Beast Juice triads. Yeah. With a 4th in between, because you got that. You know, but it is. And so is, I mean, Steve Harris uses them all the time. That's all triad, but with that's got a sus in it. So there's your triad. And they've got the 4th in between, and that suspends it. So you've got. Triads. Triad notes are always derived from face GBD. Any triad will have those letters. Yeah, you can call that a cycle of thirds. Some people like to learn it like that. The other way to think about it is, I mean, actually, there are little mnemonics that you can use for these things, but I try not to go down that road, because what can happen is you start relying on the thing that you're thinking of too much. Whereas if you just learn it, CEG is that. You know, that you've got it, right? And then E, G sharp B is that E major. I mean, I've been talking about them so much. Now when I say E, G sharp B, you're going to know that that's E major. So you don't really have... See, if you learn it as face GBD like that with the cycle of thirds thing, the problem that you're going to get is that the major thirds in there, the sharps and the flats, are going to give you little problems. So if you learn E, G sharp B as just a little pattern on its own, it's completely separate. You know, you don't have to start thinking, okay, well, face G, so F, A, C, E, G, but you don't have to start rifling through them to get it. You just learn them on their own. What about downloads like open E and G on the E string and inversions? Yeah. I mean, they're all different. I mean, there's... But, right, one thing to mention, just in case you were all wondering, this isn't the only way to play a C major triad. There are hundreds of ways, pretty much, to play the same kind of thing. Yeah, you could use that and then come up. There's a load of ways. This is just one etude way of doing it. But because there's so many different ways, and this is probably why bass players and guitarists have problems, because you get to learn that there's a bunch of these different patterns for doing it. I talk about this in the Chord Song Essentials a lot. You know, there's that, you know, and then you can move it like this all over the place. Because of that, you end up, it's like being in a sweet shop and, you know, too many sweets. It's like you've got too many options. What you need sometimes is just a single exercise that takes all of that out, you know, that covers a few bases. You know, so basically here, we're actually getting position shifts, pretty big ones, and we're getting to see the notes there as well. And it's just one exercise. Yeah, I could have played it like that. And I could have come up, I could have played it like that. That'd have been a lot easier, but I wouldn't be getting the same kind of movements. You know, so I could have played it like that and like that. I could play it like that with a big stretch. You know, I could play it like that and then come up through the inversions. There's a bunch of different exercises you can do. But like I say, they would be individual exercises. So if you would, for instance, if I was going to be playing through the inversions, I might play it C, B, G, and then E, G, C, and then G, C, E, and then up like that, and then as far up as you want. So you can come up like this. But that would be a different exercise. So that would be another book for it. So if I did triads, I'd have a whole set of different triadic exercises that you would then apply to C major. And like I said before, don't just run it through the cycle. Don't just run it through chromatics. Stick with it. Absorb those, digest those notes in there. C, E, G, C, E, G, keg. And then, you get to it. Corey says, say you do this for 7 days, would you just work that as a 5-minute warm-up at the start of your practice session or do that for like 30 minutes? Am I overthinking it? Well, you could do it for 30 minutes. I mean, it depends how easy you find the exercise. Like, if you're finding it hard, stick with it until you can play it. I mean, that might take 30 minutes. I mean, some of you are going to be more advanced than others. Some of you are going to be beginners and some of you are going to be pretty good. So if you're pretty good, you'll probably just play it. You'll just bang it out. Well, you don't really have a problem then. So you might just use it as a warm-up. But that's why having multiple exercises on that same triad is the key. Because if you've only got one, then that's, you're getting less practice out of it. If you were going to practice it for half an hour and you were at an intermediate to advanced level, yeah, you would want maybe 8 different exercises or 16 different exercises that you can run, just on that C. Or you'll get to a point where you can actually then just concentrate on one particular triad, then move to another and run it through the cycle. But instead of running it through the cycle like this, like that, you would be running it like that, and then you go to the F, which, you could do like that, and then B flat, which you could, run them like that. So that's the other option. You can run it through the cycle like that, but each one different. But at first, don't rush into the other triads. Don't rush into the other keys. And remember, this is only a major triad. I would definitely concentrate on major triads to begin with, because then minor triads, you've got to think of that minor third. You don't want to get too confused at first. But remember, there's only one note difference between the major and minor triads. So then you can address the minor triads, and then you can address the augmentants and the diminished. But, sax players, violinists, all these other instrumentalists, this is why they do ridiculous amounts of practice, because they can work on these kind of things and stick with a particular chord progression, let's say, and just running it, just running arpeggios round and round it, running scales round and round it. There's so many different kind of exercises that you can run around things, around a particular move, like a 5-1 exercise, just playing that within a key, just running various etudes around it. There's so much musical content that you can actually run. And like I said, this isn't kind of application stuff. It's not like practicing bass lines. This is the nuts and bolts of basically, it's like a foundation that you're setting, like these fundamentals that everything kind of works around, and you only really get to appreciate it when you're then doing things like bass lines, fills, and solos, and having that foundation of that stuff already there. So then when you think, okay, well now, I'm going to be playing a descending arpeggio that you've played 1,000,001 times, you're not going to have problems. It's not going to be like, oh God, what do I do here? So you're building this foundation. Bram says Jeff Billen is fantastic. He has a great online presence. Yeah, he is. He's a phenomenal bass player. He's a phenomenal musician all round. Obviously, I mean, I get on with him. I've done 3 interviews with him so far, and every time I've got to say, as much as everybody runs into difficulties with him, he admits he's been notoriously bad. He's gone to therapy. He's had all kinds of stuff, all kinds of problems. There's the big thing between Steve Bailey and Victor Wooten with him, but I've only ever found him to be a sweetheart. When I first reached out to him and said, do you fancy doing an interview? Because I kind of agreed with a lot of stuff he did, but I always thought that he never put it forward in the right way. You know, people get turned off by people being really just combative. You know, he's such a contrarian that it just winds some people up. Some people like that, but, you know, he sometimes gets into problems there. But then when the email at first, and then we sat chatting before we did the first interview. I sat chatting to him for about an hour after we'd done the first one. Just really lovely guy. You know, he was never argumentative with me. You know, he listened to everything that I'd got to say. And I mean, who the hell am I? You know, you get into these kind of things because it was a debate that I did with him. And he's here and I'm down here. So I was like, you know, I went into it thinking, man, he can always just pull rank on me. But he didn't. He never did. He listened to everything I got to say. He agreed with a lot of it. We got on. I did another interview. We got on even better. And now, you know, and then we agreed on everything on the third one. You know, I like to say it as I see it, really, or, you know, treat people as, you know, as they treat me. And I never had any problems, but I have seen the history of it. You know, back in the 90s, I remember getting Bass Player magazine and seeing the Steve Bailey, you know, they even did a photo shoot where they're like, you know, they're in the ring kind of thing together. So it's, you know, and I've talked, you know, I don't know how much I should say about it, but I have spoken to Steve Bailey via email about the interview that I did with him. He reached out, so hopefully I'll better get Steve Bailey on as well. He's head of music head of bass studies at Berklee College, and he's been really nice. To be honest, I've not really met any bass players yet. You know, big name bass players that have been dicks. They've all been pretty good. Leland Sklar was an absolute sweetheart. You know, there's like a bunch of them that are like really nice. You can't really get on in music that much at that level when you're an idiot, because people are not going to hire you. You know, there's a reason that people like Leland Sklar, Nathan East, people like that get all these gigs, Pino, all that. It's not just because they can play, because there's a lot of people that can play. You know, there's a lot. And it's because apart from they play very well, but there's more to it than that. It's whether you can fit into a band. It's the chemistry that you get with people. There's so much that goes into it. And, you know, I've run my own band as well. And, you know, it's absolutely imperative that you can get on with people. I mean, when I used to do those ship gigs, can you imagine being stuck on a cruise ship? You can't get off. You're all there, and you're sharing a cabin with the guys. I mean, it's, oh, man. If you can't get on, then, you know, you're not going to go far. Can you talk about how triads are used in actual songs and music, and how position shifts enhance a song as you move through a chord progression? Well, I talk about that a lot I've done loads on that. I mean, I purposely didn't want to talk about that because this was a different thing. Most of you that have seen, well, any of you that have done the Chord Tone Essentials course know, you know, I go through everything in that and how you apply it and everything. And I've talked about it in a lot of videos. The reason I didn't mention it here is I didn't want to confuse people. I wanted them to think of this as a robotic exercise and accept it as a robotic exercise, whether you like the idea that I'm calling it a robotic exercise or not. Because the whole point of it is that if you do it as a robotic exercise, it's going to do its job. As long as you bear in mind what those notes are. If you're thinking CEG and you're doing that, you're going to get those position shifts down. It's not really about application in a song, because very rarely are you going to do that in a song. You might do this, or you might go. They're triads. You know. C major triad, F major triad, G major triad. Basically, the chord progression, if the chord progression is C major, then you can use the C major triad. But That's where learning vocabulary comes in, where you play lots and lots and lots and lots of bass lines, and you get used to seeing those things that we've practiced in effect. Now, obviously, if you're going to be playing through, let's say that you're doing here's one little application that you've got of that. If I'm playing a walking bass line, let's say I'm just on a C, I'm not going to play a chord progression. Let's say that I'm working up. I've just gone up chromatically through. Okay, just on that single chord, right? Because we practiced that movement, you can see the areas there. I've just played basically passing notes between the third and the fifth. So there's the arpeggio, and I just filled in the gaps. That's all I'm doing, filling in the gaps with the F and the F sharp, which, you know, good old that, right? So as I'm coming up, remember what we did? That move, well, I filled in the gap. I've actually put in a little bit of a scale thing, but there you go. I'm moving up. And then, what did we have? We had that C up here. Now, if you've practiced the scale as well, in the same way, right? Because that's the other thing. It's not just playing. It's not just playing arpeggios. You've got to learn everything. You know, scales, triads, seventh chords, ninth chords, blah, 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 right? There's a lot of musical stuff, right? So you practice all of it. But if you've done the scale through those same kind of positions, there's application for a start. So it's basically about learning how to transition through positions and learning the notes, you know. But like I said earlier, you know, like, because just knowing that, knowing these two positions, when you're there, and then, you know, I'm there, and then there's this C here. You know, that's application of it in a way, because there's that position, and then here's that other position, and then up to, you know. So it's about the sum total of all of this stuff, but you're just creating this familiarity with movement and keys and triads and seventh chords and stuff. It's basically creating familiarity and a foundation for all of it. Wax on, wax off. That is basically it. You know, that you've hit the nail on the head there, Antonio, because when you actually watch The Karate Kid and he does that, right? As much as it's silly, it's like wax on, wax off, and then you know, he wins a tournament. But like, he is right that you're just accepting the movements. You're accepting the etude for what it is. It might not have any application on first glance. You'll think, how the hell is that going to apply? But then when you start learning other things, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this seems easier now, because you're creating this foundation of knowledge, basically. So, yeah, wax on, wax on, yeah. Yeah, I've talked about the inversion thing. Thanks, Andrew. How about C and E on the same string? So everybody, I can see everybody's thinking, oh, well, what about this one? And what about this one? It's like, yeah, you can play it in thousands of different ways. Maybe not thousands, but remember what I said. It's this exercise. Try not to question it. Everybody that's saying that, saying, "Oh, you can use the G." You're running with it. You're thinking, "Yes, I can do this, and then I can do that, and that's great." You suddenly start getting creative with it. But that's the problem. That's what everybody does. That's what I used to do. That's what I still do. You see something, and you just start instantly thinking more outside of the box. But generally, the way that you start thinking around it like that is to make it easier for yourself. That's what I always find. It's like you start thinking, okay, well, that's hard. I don't like that shift. Well, if I hit the open G, I know that note, and then I can shift. And, you know, it's starting to make things easier. That's not the exercise. You know, it's like doing, I mean, there's loads of exercises like this. It's like when somebody says do something around the cycle of fourths and you find a pattern for doing it, it's the absolute antithesis of what the exercise is. The exercise is supposed to be working through the cycle of fourths. Or cycle of fifths. You're supposed to be learning that cycle, not finding a pattern. Because sometimes, and I used to do this when my bass teacher used to give me these exercises. So let's say that I'm playing dominant 7 arpeggios through the cycle of fourths, right? C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, right? You suddenly think, oh, C, and then you just go up onto the next string. And then I can go down a whole step and do it again. Oh, I don't have to think about it then. How about that, Sean? What do you think? I can play it, can't I? And it's like, no, that's not the exercise. You've completely wasted the exercise because you're not learning the cycle. You're not learning the notes. The exercise is there for a reason. So try not to think of easy ways around it. It wants to be as hard as it can be. You should be thinking, man, I can't. This is hard. I don't know how to do it. Don't worry. You'll get it because, like I said, this isn't brain surgery. You're coming up through this. Once you've just got those notes, don't worry about, but what about when it's D? I'm going to have to think about different notes. Yeah, worry about that then. Just get this one down. Just C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G, keg, right? E, G sharp B, E, G sharp B. By the time you've finished this, you should be thinking E, G sharp B. I know that's an E major. I hope this is sinking in. I get so animated. You can get away with a lot in rock music as a musician, but if you want to start playing jazz, walking bass, you just can't rely on those patterns anymore. That is true. You can't. And you have to know the notes on your neck to play things like walking bass, because if you're reading a chord progression and it says A flat minor 7 or A flat major, and you don't know where an A flat is, well, you got problems. You can't just learn it as patterns. You've got to know the notes. You don't have to know the notes of everything on bass to actually do it. You don't have to be, constantly thinking E, G sharp, B, E, B, G sharp, E, for an E major bass thing. Like I said, you're going to start seeing patterns in some ways. You're going to see the intervals. You're going to see the scale degrees. But you got to know the notes on your neck. That is something. And these exercises do help with that, as do lots of others, In a jazz walking bass line, you're always working a path towards the next chord, so you need to know where the root of the next chord is. That bang on, yeah. You can get away with patterns to some extent. And like I said, you can't not see patterns. It's just the human brain sees patterns. You'll see sheep in clouds. You'll see Donald Trump in clouds. You'll see whatever in clouds. You see a fridge. You see faces in things. You see faces on trees. The brain does that. You'll always see patterns. So when you play, you cannot help it. When you play that, you're going to see that little diagonal movement between those two fingers. You're going to see that little movement there between those two. You might see the two frets in between. Oh, there's a pattern. You'll see that geometric shape. You can't help it. But you want everything. It's like everybody always gets into these, these arguments break out about these kind of things. And it's like, this needs to be this way. This needs to be that way. And it's like, no, you want to learn everything. It's like all of it. It's like, you get it with people talking about bass lines as well. Like, oh, well, Steve Harris plays like this, and then Billy Sheehan does it like this, and da-da-da-da-da, and people start. But it's like, yeah, well, you should be able to do all of that. Not just one bit. Not just, well, Steve Harris plays with 2 fingers and Billy Sheehan does it with 3, and you get these stupid arguments between people, and it's like, well, you've got to be able to do everything. Don't aim to just do it one way. Just, learn everything. See patterns, see notes, see intervals, see scale degrees, see everything. Okay, everybody seems to be getting it a little bit. And don't worry, this will be still here on YouTube. It's not just going to be live and then disappear. I'll get rid of all the garbage at the front end. Oh, by the way, while everybody's here, I've actually put a coupon in the description for the video. I completely forgot. So there's a coupon in there. You get 20% off any courses. So if you want to buy a course, there's a coupon code in there. Just put that coupon code and check out, and you'll get 20% off. Should have said that earlier. It's like half the people have left now. It's like, oh, there you go. There's a coupon. So if you want to get like chord tone essentials or technique builder or any of those courses, you'll get 20% off. I'm going to start putting them in on the different ones in on each live stream, just to as a thank you to everybody for coming to the lives. Hopefully we can start to get quite a few people in. Man, there's quite a lot of comments. In your prime, could you have fun with Dave Weckl and Chick Corea's electric band? I don't know. I doubt it. I'm no John Patitucci. Bass lines, yes. Solos, no. I could play anything that he'd play in there in terms of the bass lines. I could play any of his solos, to be honest, if I sat there and learned them. But I'm not John Patitucci by any stretch of the imagination. You know, most professional bass players would be able to play most of the electric band stuff. It's not that difficult. It's just the musicianship in general. You know, it's up here. You know, John Patitucci is just like unbelievable. You know, and if I was to do a solo over one of those tunes next to him, I'd look like an idiot. I'd look like a fool. So yeah, I'd never even try out for that. My main aim when I was a kid, I say a kid, when I was a teenager, I suppose, was that I wanted to be good enough to be able to get into Frank Zappa's band. That was my aim. I was like, if I could get good enough that I could play for him, then I just knew that was like one of the hardest things to do. And so I'm not saying that I could. I'm not saying that I'm good enough, but that was my thinking. I wanted to be able to do that. So that led me to the things that I'd want to learn. So I used to learn Frank Zappa tunes and you know, like the instrumental sections and stuff. Can't play them now, and certainly wouldn't be able to play them on a precision. But all through the 90s, I was like obsessed with. You know, that's why I practiced my reading, to be honest, because I knew that it was a sight reading gig in Zappa's band, and you'd have to be able to read. Like Vinnie Colaiuta is supposed to be like the greatest sight reader of all time. You know, he reading drum parts, and he read all that stuff, just sight read it for Zappa with all the nested tuplets and all that kind of stuff. Unbelievable. So I wanted to get my reading to a really high level. Like I say, I'm not saying that I have. It's just what I wanted, you know. Beginner bass player, Steven says, beginner bass player, but I've learned the C major and E major. There you go. So, honestly, if you just, all I did was run that exercise, and I kept saying C, E, G, and E, G sharp B. And there you go, you've got it. It's the same thing as teaching people how to do the cycle of fourths. You know, when I do that, you've probably all heard my method for learning it. And it's so, I can literally teach the cycle of fourths within, 30 seconds? And everybody gets it. I'll do it. Anybody that doesn't know the cycle of fourths and that haven't seen me teach this, let's see if we can do it. Let's think. Okay, next 30 seconds, okay? So, C and F to begin with, cycle of fourths, C and F, cycle, fourths, C, F. Now think bead of sweat, that word, stick a G on the end, bead, G. Sounds nuts, stupid, why would you do that? But there you go. Bead G, right? So we got cycle of fourths, C, F, bead G. Bead G twice, first time flats, second time naturals. C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G, and you're back to C. That's it. And that should pretty much sort you all out. I love doing those little things. I taught my I've been doing this with my daughter a lot because my grandmother used to teach me a lot of stuff when I was a kid, like memory tricks, basically. So when I was young, she used to teach me all these things to memorize. I mean, really young. So I was like, well, I was probably about 6. So first of all, she taught me the books of the Bible. So, and all these things that she taught me, I've never forgot. I only did them for about an hour when she did it, and I've never forgotten. So it was like Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, Samuel, Kings, Chronicles, etc. So I can do all those. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans. I can do all those. And then she taught me the alphabet backwards. So it was like Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, L, K, J, I, H, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. So we did that. And then she taught me the Greek alphabet. So it was like alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, etc. And we just did loads of those. And so now when it comes to these kind of things in music, I kind of do it the same way. Find these little ways of memorizing, because pretty much most of it is memory. If you've got a good memory for this stuff, E, G sharp B, we've been talking about that, and C, E, G. You probably won't forget that now. It's just focusing on the memory side of it. And I know memory isn't everything when it comes to music. It's a creative endeavor. It's artistic, but memory is involved in all of this nuts and bolts stuff. You're basically just memorizing stuff and cataloging it in your brain. Right, let's go down a bit because I'm going to have to get off in a sec because my missus is gigging and I need to babysit. How do you practice on triads below the root? Well, remember what I said? C, E, G. So C, E, G. There you go. You can think of it as a pattern and just sort of see the 3rd and 5th below. So if I'm on a C there, E and G. But, in the chord tone essentials, I talk about this a lot. What I actually do there is actually show you how to play all of the chord tones in any one position. So instead of just running through them like this, you'll run. So let's say it's a C major 7. All of the notes in one area. So I'm just down in that first area there. So I'm playing up through the arpeggio up to the octave, as far up as we can go. Then I come back down, and then I go below with the B, G, and E, and then come back. And you just get used to running. Same here. Okay, and you can do this with any of the patterns. So if I'm playing, let's say, a first finger pattern for the... But I talk about that in the chord tone essentials course. But this isn't that. This is an etude. This is a completely separate thing. This is just a way of learning that stuff that I've just taught you. It's not really... They're two separate things. Learning all of the notes in one area it's a different thing. Equally as useful, but it's just a separate kind of thing to learn. And you need to learn both. Like I said, this isn't like a one-size-fits-all thing. This isn't like the only exercise that you learn for, and then it's like everything. It's like there'll be hundreds or thousands of these exercises that you can learn. Thanks for all the nice things that you've been saying. Would an 8-hour bass shed majorly transform your playing, generally speaking? I used to practice more than 8 hours a day. I think lots of people do. But no, it won't. It won't. I mean, so when I was a kid, especially when I was having time off school, so if I wasn't in school, and let's face it, I bunked off school a lot to just play bass at some points, but I'd start as soon as I got up, just because I loved it. First thing I'd do, grab my bass and start banging out tunes. But it depends what you're practicing. All I did at that point, when I first started, is I had a bunch of mixtapes that I'd done. So we're talking 1990, 1991. So I got like a bunch of mixtapes playing Maiden and Pantera and Megadeth and Metallica and Anthrax. And then there were a few other things that I'd got. I was getting into like a few progressive rock things and
I think eventually I added some Jaco Pastorius to it, but I was basically playing along to mixtapes. And so I'd start playing through them in the morning. Sometimes I'd run scales, because I knew some scales. So I'd run those as a kind of warm-up, because I thought that was something that I should do, even though it didn't really help. And then, and I was learning Billy Sheehan licks as well. And then I'd just play. Let's say it was a Saturday, right? I'd grab it, then I'd go to get something to eat, and then I'd just play all day, and then I'd have something else to eat, and then I'd play all evening. And then I'd go to bed. I just played all day. I don't know how many hours it was, but it was a lot. And then some days I wouldn't be able to play all day because I'd be going out and doing whatever. and then the things get in the way. But the time that it got really intense was when I went to music college, because then I'd get up, I'd practice, I'd go into college, we'd be doing music all day until 5 o'clock, and then I'd come home, and then I'd have homework for it, so I'd have to either write an essay on something or I'd have to learn a piece, and then I'd practice after that, and then I'd go to bed. So I was doing a lot of practice. Was it useful? Well, yeah. When I was at college it was, because it was all really, intricate stuff. Playing along to mixtapes for 8 hours a day, yeah, your fingers will start to get a little bit more. You'll start to play around quite a bit. You get a bit of dexterity, but you better, if you were, you don't need 8 hours a day. 1 hour of really, really good practice, like very, what's the word? Useful practice is way better than just banging out some soul tunes. There's nothing wrong with that, and that should be a part of your practice. But, and to be fair, when you very first start playing, you are best just playing as many songs as you can, because, all this scale stuff's not as important. You just get your fingers working, get so that you can play tunes. It doesn't take long, you just get so you can play stuff, and then you can start adding all this other stuff in. Right, I'll move down a little bit further. Right, that's obviously where I was talking about the getting on with people. Adichie has got it perfect. All of these etudes serve to develop skill through isolated practice. That's it. When the concept has been totally internalized, then the skill will be able to manifest itself in various musical situations. Exactly that. You don't know why you're learning it at first, and it doesn't seem to have any application. But then your facility starts to rear its head when you're doing other stuff. Donald Trump in clouds. Yeah. That was a good one, wasn't it? King of Bass Lessons, thank you very much. Chord Tone Essentials was so helpful. Should be a required course for any beginning bassist. Thank you very much. Right, I need to get out of here, so I'll just have a look at. I'll just see if there's anything worth answering. Just in the, not that things aren't worth answering, but I'll just see if there's anything that I can just shed light on. Yeah, playing with Zappa was quite a goal. Yeah, yeah. And I'd have probably completely flunked it. Because joining his band wasn't about whether you can play through giant steps at 5,000 miles an hour. It was, you needed incredibly good reading. I don't think my reading's up to that level, to be honest. My rhythmic ability's not too bad, so I'd have been probably okay with a lot of the stuff like, the odd rhythms and things, because I've practiced them a lot. So I'd have probably been okay with that. I don't know if I've got any. I don't know if technically I was probably technically good enough back then, just in terms of being able to play stuff. But I wouldn't have had. I mean, look at me talking about as if I could have joined Frank Zappa's band. But like, I probably would never have had the kind of personality or the characteristic traits that a lot of his players had. They were all individuals. Like he'd pick people that had like a quirk or a not a gimmick, but they always had something about them. And I mean, he obviously had an amazing eye for being able to pick people, because I mean, discovering pretty much Steve Vai, Vinnie Colaiuta, and Terry Bozzio, and every other player that's gone after Mike Keneally and all that lot, he knew that they had something, And I know he didn't completely discover them. It wasn't like they were completely unknown at the time, especially Vinny, but I mean, to all intents and purposes, they probably were. Certainly not like they are now, But I'd have never had something that's characteristically me enough to take me on. I'd have flunked it, if I'd have gone in. Which would have been awful because, he's my hero. So it'd have been awful. Okay, so thanks everybody. Suda versus Sterling. You always give me a question about the about UFC. I don't know. I don't care who wins in those two. I mean, Cejudo, fair enough. I mean, he's good and all, and Sterling's good, but God, I mean, Cejudo's so cringe, and Sterling he's good, but I'm not into either of them. I mean, I've seen people say hopefully it's a double knockout. Both flat out. I just cannot be. I mean, I'll watch it. I'm dead interested to watch it, but I'm not. I really don't care who wins. What is a good study piece? Well, I've got two of them on the website. I mean, there's the good old, Well done. But I've got that, and I've got the what's the other one? Probably number one. There's a few classical ones that I've got on there, so they're both good study pieces because they're quite easy. And I've got to, and I'm going to do more of them, more study pieces that I can put in there as well. Mark the stunt bassist, yeah, like Vi the stunt guitarist, yeah, that'd be great. I mean, to be fair, I mean, people today talking about, just having a few days to learn stuff. I mean, not anymore, but when I used to be full-time professional player, just playing with whoever there was, generally it'd be sight reading, especially when I used to do the boats. That was like, we'd have artists come in, and whoever it was, it could be hard, it could be like a West End thing or a Broadway star, they'd come in and you'd have to just sight read it, or a band would come in and you might have to back them and read it, or whoever it was, a comedian, whoever it was, and you'd have to sight read the stuff. But the other bands that I did that might have thousands of songs in the repertoire, I'd have to on the boats, that is, I'd just have to read it all, and then they'd have like there'd be people doing requests and things, and you just have to play it on the fly. And I'd be like, I don't know this tune, but the rest of the band would be the keyboard player that I played with there. He'd been playing he was amazing. He just knew every tune ever, and so I just have to blag it, just playing along with him. But I got kind of good at being able to sort of fit into those kind of situations where you just like, I don't know, just blag it, that kind of thing. So. Yeah, when people give you a short amount of time to learn something, I got fairly good at that. I'd be terrible now because I just have other things going on in my mind. But at the time, all I did was music, and so I was pretty good at learning stuff on the quick, getting it down fast. It helped with a lot. I was transcribing a lot as well. I mean, it just sounds like I'm blowing my own trumpet with that, but it was just I was crap at loads of other stuff. But it was like that kind of thing I was fairly good at. Well, like I say, I'd be terrible at now. I'm just like, I just don't practice anymore. I just don't play live anymore. Right, okay, I'm going to get moving. And like I said, there's a 20% discount code in the description below this video. So if you're interested in getting any of those courses, then it's there. I will hopefully see you all next week. See you later.